Good.
Good to see you.
Okay, Shelly, you have this sheet that I just
I
sent.
can let Chedva in too. You're right, I can let people in. There you go.
You what?
I can let people in, really.
So I just okay, now we're back. Vivian's here.
Good morning, good morning,
How
Rabbi.
you doing, Viv?
I'm well, thank you. How are you?
Great. Okay, so you'll see what I mean. That there's a reason why I didn't. I don't know if I want to share the screen because it's like I won't be able to keep track myself. So if you have the sheet, or even follow on your screen, or if you printed it and print it in color,
Yeah.
is very important. You'll see why, because what started off is it started off like this. I don't know if you can see this. Like, you know, when I'm doing this, this is not just like an accident. So what we have to do is we have to pay attention to the text. And this is based on an article I read from Rabbi Grummet. This book is phenomenal. If you could see this, it's Moses and the Path to Leadership, right? Tell Merritt it's Father's Day coming up. Maybe Merritt needs a new book, right? She's like,
Okay.
okay. It's
Yeah.
phenomenal. It's phenomenal on Bamidbar, but really it's the whole career of Moshe Rabbeinu, and his typical here again. He wrote a book on Bereshis also, which is just, you know, he doesn't need my approbation, but he's a great teacher. And by the way, I'm super excited. So every single year, Herzog College, together with like every institution in the Gush, they have what's called Yemei Iyun B'Tanach, but it's always during the 9 days. And the greatest Bible scholars in Israel, of which there are a lot, they give 4 straight days of shiurim nonstop, and included in that also are biblical tours. So biblical, you know, you tour the land with what you're learning. And I always want to go, but I don't take off until after Tisha B'Av, so I can never go during the 9 days. And this year they're doing a whole series of them every day on Zoom. So I was able to sign up and really, so I'm like so excited, like all my favorite teachers, you know, the people that I share with you all the time, and they're all with us. So it's going to be, I'm really excited about that. Let me just let Nancy in if I could just, there we go. And so that's really excited. Hi, were you in Israel also? Did you get to go?
Yes, sir.
Amazing. Welcome back.
Thank you.
And you're the latest individual to like our Eitz Chaim Facebook page. Thank you.
I
I
do
keep track of these
recognize.
things. It really is
I
amazing.
apologize, we haven't met. You are?
I'm Rachel Rubin.
Hi, Rachel Rubin. I'm Gail Toll. So nice to meet you.
Her son is
Nice to meet
serving in the army, and she just got back from seeing him. And
What?
Did you get a tech essay?
No, the Tech S was last year, and it was. We were there during the.
yeah, sure, of course.
Yeah,
Yeah,
of course.
yeah, absolutely. Okay, so what we're gonna do is, so what I have, I get, so the reason why, and the way he takes us apart is that, so we know the stories. If I would ask somebody, what's Korach's problem? And by the way, no self-respecting rabbi would go away for Parshas Korach for Shabbos, because every rabbi wants to speak Korach about machlokas, it was challenging, we're right, you know. That's just kind of how it goes. So, what's Korach's problem? If I ask you,
Rebellious.
oh, okay,
He's jealous.
of what? Let's be more specific. He's jealous of Moshe, so he wants Moshe's job. Who in the right mind would want Moshe's
Seriously.
job?
Aaron.
So he's jealous of Aaron. Was he Moshe or Aaron? Which is it?
I think but she thinks no.
I'm gonna start calling on Vivian in a second. So, no, she says no. She's shaking her head vigorously. So how about Chedva? Can I call him Chedva?
There
Um,
was supposed to be, there was like a line of succession, something, and Korach thought he was the one who was supposed to be.
All right. So so then
Seems a lady also.
so let's go back. So who is Korach?
His cousin. maybe?
Well, we're told he's Ben Yitzhar Ben Kahas Ben Levi. So he's obviously related to Moshe and Aaron, because when you see Ben Kahas Ben Levi, there are 3 Gershon, Kahas, and Merari. But the descendants of Kahas, I'll make it easy. They're cousins, okay? And we say there's no fight like a family fight, right? The best fights that you have and the nastiest fights that you have are always with people that are usually blood relatives, okay? And it's usually over, as I always say, it's over one thing,
Money.
right? It's over money. So if we say that this is about money, now, by the way, I don't think we're going to say about money. Who feels they're the most proficient in Yiddish here?
I understand, I don't speak.
So there's an expression, there's an idiom when you say in Yiddish, when you say someone is rich, What do they say?
Yes.
Rich is reich, by the way. So it's reich ke Korach.
Oh, interesting.
You've heard that, Shelley? You've heard that?
Oh, I've not.
So ask your Yiddish fellows. Reich ke Korach, that when we describe someone who's rich, you're rich as Korach. So in other words, Korach is rich. He doesn't need money. So if he's not after money, what's he after? Power. Okay, the question is, so you said Moshe, you said Aaron. Now, by the way, was it just Korach involved in this? No, there's Korach. There's who else? Dasan and Aviram. Who played Dasan in the 1956 epic Cecil B. DeMille film?
Oh, what's his name?
Yeah,
Let's see.
I wasn't either, but I know.
Joshua's girl. Oh,
Who?
I'm trying to think of his name.
Edward G. Robinson.
Yes.
Wow. Wow.
Steel trap for nonsense.
Yeah.
It's okay. At the time, that movie set the record for the most extras ever in a film. But I digress. So the Dustin and Aviram, but okay, so let's just read through the psukim, and then you'll understand why I color coded this. I did this to try and explain Rabbi Grumet's approach to this, but it'll make it much more easy to digest, as it were, and it'll really put things in perspective. And that thing doesn't stop flashing when I have a seizure. So, Vayikach Korach ben Yitzar ben Kahas ben Levi v'Dasan v'Aviram b'nei Eliyav v'On ben Pelas b'nei Reuven. Okay, so we got a lot. That's a mouthful here. There's Korach, there's Dasan and Aviram, there's On ben Pelas, and then the next pasuk says, "Vayakumu lifnei Moshe v'anashim b'nei Yisrael chamishim b'sayim." By the way, the translation are found on the subsequent pages if anybody needs. And they stood in front of Moshe with people from Bnei Yisrael chamishim b'sayim. So there's 200. So there's 250 plus Korach and some Levium. It seems also there's Dasan and Aviram, and then there's On ben Pelas. So there's at least 254 people. Okay, and that's a formidable rebellion, I guess, and 254 people stand up, but it seems that there's actually going to be more than that. Okay, and Vayikoalu al Moshe v'al Aaron vayomeru alechem rav lachem ki choleida. It's so funny. It says alechem. It's really alechem. It's because in Sefaria, when you correct it, and you say don't write Hashem's name. I guess it's a computer. Computer's not so smart. The computer didn't go to yeshiva, so it thinks that it looks like it says Elohim probably, or so they changed it to Elohim. Vayomer alechem rav lachem ki chol ha'ida kulam kedoshim uvisocham Hashem umadua tisnasu al kahal Hashem. So I'll read you the Art Scroll translation, which I like better. They stood before Moshe, 250 men. They gathered against Moshe and against Aaron, and they said, "It's too much for you. For the entire assembly, all of them are holy, and Hashem is among them. Why do you exalt yourselves over the congregation of Hashem?" So, based just on that, let's treat them as a collective. What is their problem? I understand we have to read Rashi, but I'm just, but sometimes you have to just read the text and kind of take out everything that you know, and read it very, very carefully, which is exactly what we're going to do through this whole mahalach here.
It almost sounds like they're not happy there are leaders at all.
Okay, so what tells you that, Shelley? What's the key phrase there?
That they're all well, no.
Yeah.
That they're all holy.
We're all holy.
But then anybody can be a leader.
They're communists. Okay, if we could quote the great Talmudic source, The Incredibles, that if everyone's super, then no one is.
But actually, you know what? It's more the word titnasu that really kind of.
Okay, so
that they don't want any leadership.
So why do you exalt yourselves? By the way, plural. So that means that this collective is speaking against Moshe and Aaron. Okay. Now, so now we have to figure out who are these people? First of all, and it's indicated, Rashi points this out, but it's indicated in the lineage that is recited. So first, Korach ben Yitzhar ben Kas ben Levi. So he's family of Levi. So he has an issue with his family. Like, why did they get to be in charge? It's some sort of a nepotism charge, okay? And then you have Dasan and Aviram, and it tells you that they're Bnei Reuven. Why do you think that's significant that it says Bnei Reuven?
Ruvain was before.
Correct. So Ruvain is the Bechor. What happened to the Bechor, by the way?
He got kicked out, Godfather style.
Correct. You've been with me long enough. It makes me such nachas. Oh, she said she got kicked out. Ruvain got kicked out Godfather style. I mean, I have such nachas right now. Elian, when you watch this, you see they're learning from you. But also meaning what happened to it used to be that the Bechorim, the firstborns, had the contract to carry out all the religious work, so to speak. When did they lose that contract? After what episode?
When Ruvain made his-
No. I'm talking about the what? No. That's just the personal. I'm saying about the Bechorim themselves, that in every tribe, it was the firstborn who were supposed to carry out all the ritual work. When did they lose that contract? And it was transferred to the Levium. Correct. Chedo Egel for the golden calf. After the golden calf, by the way, when did that transfer take place? In the beginning of Parshas Baaloscha. So you have to see the succession of events, by the way. Baaloscha, Shalach, and maybe Korach. And there's a machlokas about how soon after the sin of the spies did it take place. Let's assume that it's relatively soon afterward. And if that's the case, what better time to strike at the leadership than when the people are disgruntled? Because, oh, by the way, how about that 40 years business? Okay, how you doing? Okay, so the simple claim is you have enough, it's too much for you, share the wealth, but not the wealth of money, the wealth of power, the wealth of rulership. Now, by the way, if you had to describe to me, what's the ruling structure, so to speak, of Moshe and Aaron? Like who does what? What like is it like the president and the vice president? Is it like the president and the prime minister? Is it
Religious, spiritual stuff is.
so it's like the prime minister and the chief rabbi.
Yeah.
Yeah. Would it be that the chief rabbi could actually do anything? Okay.
I was thinking Prime Minister could do anything.
Well, not in religious matters. In other words, there's a political leader, and then there's a spiritual leader. Obviously, Aaron is a spiritual leader, and Moshe is the political leader. Okay. Rabbi Wein always used to say to us that the term for the chief rabbi is 10 years. By the way, in Israel, the chief rabbi, the term is 10 years. He said that's 10 years too long. So, fine. So what's Moshe's reaction? And this is, it's on there, but on my sheet here, I just left, that's the only one that's not colored in. It's just this line here is that Moshe falls down. He hears this and he falls down. Okay, now, as a side note, and this is very, very important, it might be worth it for I don't know, maybe for an address to graduates this Shabbos, maybe, perhaps. What is what's noticeably missing from this? Aaron. Where's Aaron? I mean, did they not speak to Aaron also? They're complaining against Aaron? You'll notice that throughout the entire story, Aaron says nothing. He's a peacemaker. Aaron says nothing. We see no reaction. Now, did it hurt him? Of course it hurts him. I don't know, he's not inhuman. But sometimes you have to know when to answer, and sometimes you have to know when to just ignore. Now, an appropriate message to graduates would be, especially if they're going out into the world, and especially if you know what we're dealing with in the world today, is that this is not a time to be silent. This is not a time to be ashamed of who we are. This is a time to be proud of who we are. Okay, but that's a graduation speech. Fine. I'm in the process of writing 2 graduation speeches right now. That's good. Okay, now, what happens now is, so by the way, we also have to look at it in context. If you'll take the time and look at last week's part where Moshe hears what's going on, they don't tell him firsthand. He hears murmurings in the camp and he becomes known to him. And then he falls down also. And then all of a sudden it says God appears in a cloud and God tells him what to do. That doesn't happen here. Moshe, now what is the expression of falling down? So Rashi explains it's despair. It's like, Gevalt, like what now? And by the way, the whole book of Bamidbar, starting from already chapter 11 and last in Baaloscha, you always remember that because chapter 11 is when the wheels fall off the bus of Klal Yisrael, and that's when they go bankrupt. That's always how you remember it. Chapter 11 is when they go bankrupt, okay? And everything starts to fall apart. It's one thing after another. The whole book is like, what now? Like, you ever have one of those days, years, or lives where everything just one bad thing after another? You're like, what? Like, really, God? What do you want from me? So Moshe's like, it's a natural reflex for him Some say that he fell down in prayer, that he wants to know what to do. But notice, God doesn't intervene here. God doesn't save him. God doesn't appear in a cloud, doesn't put up the force field and say, come into the tent of meeting and we'll figure out what to do. Moshe takes action. And this is part of, in Rabbi Grumit's book, he's developing the character or the leadership qualities of Moshe Rabbeinu, how his career, he matures, so to speak, as a leader and how he deals with crises. Now, there's leadership and there's leadership when you're dealing with crises. Now, if you're constantly putting out fires, that's not leadership, that's reactive. Okay, leadership is where you try to get ahead of these things. So here, even though it looks like he's putting out a fire, he's actually being proactive here because God never at any point do you see that God instructs him what to do. He decides on the next pasuk. It's not even a paragraph break. The next pasuk in pasuk, verse 5. Okay, when we start in the blue, we're already in the blue text now. What happens? Moshe takes upon himself to do something about it. So he speaks, and what happens here is that you have to, and here's why we have the color differences between the red and the blue. I think the key is in the back of the sheets here. Okay, so just look at the end of the sheet, the last page of the sheet here. Black is Moshe and Aaron. That's the first part. Blue is Korach and the Levium. There are a series of Levium that are with Korach. Red is Dasan and Aviram and the 250 leaders. Okay. On ben Pelet, by the way, On ben Pelet, there's a great Gemara. The Gemara in Sanhedrin tells us that when the whole thing goes down, On ben Pelet, he slept through it.
Okay.
Why do you sleep through it? We know the story. Shelley's nodding her head. She knows the story.
That's something that is about his wife.
Correct. His wife, she said, you don't want to get it mixed up with these no good nicks. And it says that she got him a shtickle shikker. He went to sleep, and then when they came to get him, it says that she uncovered her hair so that they wouldn't come in the tent to get him, because they're very frum. They wouldn't go like I said. So you want to, all you have to do is just roll up your sleeve a little. That's why. So they shouldn't get involved. Okay, but that's going to be the code here, blue and red, and you'll notice that Moshe addresses each group separately. And by the way, also notice the alternating pattern. It goes blue, red, okay, blue. And we'll see why that's important as well. Now, why would somebody speak to them differently? Why would you speak to them separately? Oh, correct. They had different issues. Eline's perfect. She said that they had different issues, which therefore brings us back to our very original question of what was their problem? You said they wanted Moshe's job. You said they wanted Aaron's job. Guess what? You're both right. That they had differences of opinion. They each wanted something, but you know what they say? Politics makes strange bedfellows. That's a Mishnah Pirkei Avos. You know what's going to come up. Mishnah says, what is a machlokas l'shem shemayim? There's machlokas. Now, by the way, machlokas by definition is not bad. People think, machlokas is bad. The world was created by machlokas, meaning God separated the heavens and the earth, right? Vayavdel. That's machlokas just means separation. If it's l'shem shemayim, if it's the right, you can't. The entire Talmud is comprised of machlokas. Does that mean the Talmud is bad? No, it's l'shem shemayim. So the Gemara gives the Mishnah in Avos in the 5th chapter gives the example of Hillel and Shammai. Hillel says this, Shammai says this. And they got along, by the way. They invited each other to the other schimta. The Gemara discusses how the families married one another. Okay. As I keep saying over and over and over, unity does not mean conformity. If it's l'shem shemayim, we can have a difference of opinion. And I'm pretty sure that we have many issues here that we probably disagree on. We all play nicely. And we let Vivian come to Zoom. It's all good. She just went on off camera, just as I said that. She knew. It's like she knew. Okay, but we can get along. What's shalom l'shem shemayim for not for the sake of heaven? So the Mishnah says it's Korach va'adaso. Now, if you read that Mishnah carefully, it's a very strange verbiage because it should say Korach v'Moshe, Korach v'Aaron, but it says Korach va'adaso, meaning that even Korach and his cohorts did not agree with one another necessarily, but because they had a common enemy, they say that's why grandparents and grandchildren get along. because they have a common enemy. That's what they say. We'll see. So in other words, they each have their own issue. So it could be, so if I had to pick for you to line up, who do you think had what issue? What does Korach want? Korach and Levi, what do you think they want? They probably want the religious leadership because they're in that family. 250 elders, Dasan and Aviram, who are not of the religious sect necessarily. They want power. They want control. That's probably what Moshe has. So it could be that Moshe, so the brilliance of Moshe right here is that he first of all, he's very much involved in this. So he didn't find out secondhand, they went straight to him. He understands immediately what's happening, who wants what, and he then employs a brilliant tactic of what we call divide and conquer. Okay, he'll look at each group separately. So that's why you could read through the text a million times and you wouldn't see it. If it's color coded and it's broken up like this, you look at it in a totally different fashion. And I have done all the legwork for you. Okay, so this is just, you're not going to get this anywhere else. I'm just telling you right now, this is like a human smartboard, what's happening. If I had the ability to learn off a smartboard, last night we had names, not numbers in school. First time I was in the building in over a year, I couldn't believe it. I was like a shechiana moment. I'm usually at the school, every Monday Day, right? First time in over a year to be in the Epstein-Stein auditorium and to see, by the way, the stories were unbelievable. Every year, that production is just absolutely incredible. So it's really, really something. Anyway, let's look at the blue now. So this is the blue. And again, look at our key. That Moshe speaks to Korach and to the Levium. Vaydaber el Korach v'chol ad aso boker v'yoda Hashem es kol hashalav es kodesh v'kri elav v'es hashev charbo yakri v'elav. So he speaks to Korach and to his entire assembly. Now, that's why I say that there's more. It's not just Dasan and Aviram had their 250. Korach had his assembly, which we're told are other Levium who want sort of Aaron's job. And he says, in the morning, Hashem's going to make known who is the one who was his own, the Holy One, and he'll draw himself close to himself, and whoever he's choosing, he's going to, in other words, we're going to have a showdown at the OK Corral. God's going to decide. Zos asu kechulachem machtos korach v'chol adaso ustu v'hen eish v'simo lehen ketores l'fnei Hashem machar v'haya ish asher Hashem hu hakadosh baruch hu l'chem Levi. So he says you'll place fire. You're going to take the fire pans, Korach and all your people. You're going to put fire and you're going to put incense, and the one Hashem's going to choose, he's the Holy One. It's too much for you. Now, by the way, notice how he says too much for you, because they said to him, Rav Lachem, it's too much for you. So he's using, Moshe's being sarcastic with them. Okay, you want to. So no, by the way, God did not institute this. God didn't tell him to do this. Where does Moshe get this idea from? Why this? Where do you think? Think back to Parsha Shmini, which probably, if you look at it chronologically, maybe it's 6 months earlier. What happened on opening day of the Mishkan? Yes, the sons of Aaron, Dasan and Nadav and Avihu. Confuse them. Dasan, Aviram, Nadav, Avihu. Maybe. So they bring ketores, incense, in a fire pan that was not commanded. And what happened? Boom, they were burned immediately. And you'll see that when it happens, it's the exact same language, that a fire came from heaven and consumed them. Okay? So what happened? Moshe says, okay, well, so this is Moshe's tactic. Okay. I'm sure they didn't forget that. By the way, it's their cousins.
Did any of them then drop out?
So that's probably the hope. That's probably the initial hope of okay, this should be a deterrent. Oh, you want to know? Let's go the Nadav and Avihu route. Let's see how that worked out for them. How do you think? And in other words, to Moshe, it's like taking poison. You take it. You know what happens when someone else takes it, so either you're not going to get involved, or if you take it, you know exactly what's going to happen. So he didn't think they would actually go through with it. So that was his tactic. And by the way, because this is in the religious realm, the right Kohen was supposed to bring it. They were not the right Kohanim at the time, Aaron's sons, and look what happened to them. You want to be the right Kohanim? All right, we'll see. Take the test. So Moshe didn't need God's instruction. Moshe already had precedent for this, okay?
But isn't there a specific time to bring the Torah? Can't you not just bring it whenever you want, willy-nilly? Aaron has to be commanded also.
Right. Well, they had a daily offering.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
So
Peter
they did
McTorah. So he said,
everything.
it's part of the daily offering. We're gonna go. But in other words, but at the same time, you can't, because you just can't bring it any time. So if Moshe is going to say, okay, let's see if God picks the right one, then if you're afraid of it, then you won't even show up. But if you're not afraid of it, oh, that's the whole thing. You can't just bring. That's actually the Gemara in the Daf Yomi right now is talking about all the different karbanos and keturas that you could bring right now. So he says, now look what happens at verse 8. Vayomer Moshe el Korach Shimona b'nei Levi. Now Moshe again says to Korach, listen, b'nei Levi, hama'at mikem kivdil lakei Yisrael eschem me'adas Yisrael lakriv eschem elav la'avodas havras mishkan Hashem v'lamod l'fnei adel sharsam v'akriv oscha v'eskolachach b'nei Levi tach v'kashtem gam kahuna l'chein atav v'chal adasacha anodim al Hashem v'aram ma'hu ki salino lav. That's the end of his communication here. Let's just read the translation. Moshe says to Korach, listen, offspring of Levi, is it not enough that God of Israel has separated you from the assembly of Israel, that you're close to God, meaning you have service? You had a job. They had a job. They just wanted more. Understand? And he drew you near, and all your brethren, all the offspring of Levi with you, yet you want to be a Kohen also? So here it's very clear. That's what Korach and the Levites wanted. They wanted to be Kohanim. Therefore, you and your entire assembly that are joining together against Hashem. And as for Aaron, what is he that you protest against him? So it's very clear here that this group, they want Aaron's job. Now, what's interesting about this paragraph? Again, you have to read it super, super extra special carefully. Is that in the first time, in verse 5, it says Moshe speaks to Korach and his entire assembly. Here in verse 8, Moshe speaks to Korach. Now, why?
He speaks to Korach, but it says sons of Levi.
Correct.
So it's a plural. So it's not son of Levi.
Yeah. But the Torah specifically says, as opposed to where it says he spoke to Korach and his whole cohort, here it says he spoke just to Korach. Moshe says to Korach, maybe they're kind of listening. So what, like, even within this group, there's a divide and conquer. Because what happens, right? So what happens when you speak to a group, and then all of a sudden, like, you pull one guy aside and you start shushkering? You know what the word is shushkering means? Okay, shushkering is when people are just kind of talk amongst themselves and you don't know what's happening, but they're like, you hear voices and you hear them talking and it gets animated. That's the Yiddish word called shushkering. I don't know how to really define it, but if you know what it means, you know what it means. It's shushkering. And so and all of a sudden, maybe he's striking a deal. Maybe he's making a special deal with Korach and he's cutting us out, right? So he's trying to sow the seeds of discord even amongst this group.
So that's
Okay.
what he's trying to? I thought
That's-
He's talking to him in plural.
like Korach then would convince his group. I didn't realize he's trying to create another.
That's one way to read it, but another way to read it is that Moshe is being brilliant here, and he's trying to say, if that's what maybe, oh, you want kahuna, but what happens when I go out against one of your own people? Let's see what happens here. Okay, so he's
Brilliant.
now red. Now we're in the red zone. There's no parking in the red zone. Vayishlach Moshe. Now we're in pasuk Yud Beis. Now Moshe sends l'kro l'dasem v'lavrebnei l'vayimel aleh. This pasuk in and of itself is very, very telling, because Korach wanted Aaron's job. So Moshe goes to Korach, he approaches him and he explains why Aaron is holy. You're also holy, but what do you want this for? And we'll have a test. What happens to Dasan and Aviram? No, look, read it carefully. Tell me again. What does it say?
Vayishlach Moshe l'kro l'datan v'aviram.
Yeah.
He went to bring them.
Which means,
He had someone bring them to him,
he sends for them.
which is a demotion.
He sends for them. That's the ultimate display of power, is where you get summoned, right? He subpoenaed them. And by the way, they said, I'm not coming.
Because it's an insult.
It's an insult to them, but also their complaint is not about holiness. Their complaint is about power. So what he's trying to do, he comes first from a position of power. He exerts his power, says, you come to me. Okay, so that's very important to read into that pasuk. It continues, and by the way, this pasuk is just why you'd miss it if you didn't read it carefully. And this is what they say. They say, look at verse 13. Is it not enough that you brought us up from a land flowing with milk and honey to cause us to die in the wilderness, and yet you want to dominate us even further? What a pachin panim! They're saying, you took us away from a land of milk and honey. They're referring to Egypt as a land flowing with milk and honey, which is a mamazah pachin punim, Right? Fraskin pisk, right to Moshe Rabbeinu. Okay. Trying to use every Yiddish word that I know that I can say in school. The bad ones I know plenty. So they want to, they're like, what chutzpah? Not only that, you didn't bring us to a land flowing with milk and honey. You didn't give us anything. Even if you would cut out, he says, we're not going up. Even if you cut out our eyes, he says, we're not going. Vayicher LaMoshe Ma'od, Vayomer El Hashem, Al Tefen El Min Chasam, Lo Chamor Echad Mehem Nasasiv LaHarayoseh Atzach HaMehem. Moshe gets very angry when they say this for obvious reasons. And he says to Hashem, don't turn to the gift offering. I've never taken anything of theirs. I've never wronged any one of them. Now, here also you notice, here Moshe turns to Hashem. With the story defending Aaron's honor, Aaron's position, Moshe doesn't need to turn to Hashem because Moshe knows what to do. Here, they're going after Moshe himself. This group wants Moshe's job. And by the way, we'll see that Hashem also seems to follow Moshe's lead here with the divide and conquer. Okay, so if I would ask you, how did this uprising end? Before we read further, what happens?
Weren't they also swallowed?
There's swallowing of the earth
And then the fire.
and the fire.
Yeah.
There's actually two separate punishments that take place here. Why? Because they're two separate groups. We'll see one pasuk that doesn't really fit into this theory. There's one pasuk here which is very, very hard to understand. The Mefarshim struggle with it. We'll see. Let's see. Let us see. But if that's the case, Moshe, because he has to defend himself, he needs help. Aaron has Moshe. Who does Moshe have? So he has to turn to God and he says, God, I'm telling you, don't turn to their offering, whatever it is that they want. Don't do it. I've never taken a thing from them. Now, go back to the text. Again, it's all part of the same chapter. There's no paragraph breaks. But when you see it like this, now we're back in the blue. Okay, Pasuk Tezayin. Vayomer Moshe el Korach, Atov v'chol adascha hayil lifnei Hashem atov aram achar. You and all your people, your Levium, you are going to stand with Aaron tomorrow. But why tomorrow? Why not now? Let's give him time to reconsider. Almost like Aaron does with the Ched Egel. He says, like, we'll do it tomorrow. We'll get there, Okay. Ukechu ish machtaso nesatem alein katoris v'ektam v'nei Hashem ish machtaso chamishim v'sam machtos atav Aaron ish machtaso, and you're going to take 250. Now here it's confusing. Are the 250 Levium or the 250 with dust and Aviram? It's very confusing in the Pesukim. It's not clear. Okay. Only here does he say the 250, which gives us when we get to Pasuk Lamed Hey, which creates a complication for us. So each one took his fire pan. They put on fire. So what happens? Here's the showdown. They take the fire pans and they stood at the opening with Moshe and Aaron. And Hashem then they gathered, and Hashem appears before the entire assembly. Now we're going back to red, because what happens is not all of a sudden with Korach we go back to the other group. This is Pasuk Chaf now, and by the way, there, if you'll notice, you see the pay there at the end of 19. That means it's a parsha break. Okay, so if you look at it in the text, you see this little the break, that space. That means that it's a parsha break. Okay, there is, so that's like new topic. Okay. Hashem now speaks. So Hashem speaks to Moshe and he says, get out of there. I'm going to destroy them in an instant. Okay, now what do you mean Hashem? Hashem is only involved when Moshe asked him to take care of Dasan and Aviram. Moshe didn't ask Hashem to take care of Korach and them because he was defending Aaron's honor. He didn't ask Hashem's advice. Vayiplu al panehem, they fall on their faces. Vayomru again, they said, God, one man's going to sin. You're going to be angry with everybody. So Hashem speaks to Moshe again. It's another chapter break, a paragraph break in Chaf Gimel 23. She speaks to Moshe and he says, "Daber kol Eloi dali more." Speak to the assembly and say, "Hey alumi saviv lemishkan Korach dasan va'aviram." Get yourselves up from around the dwelling places of Korach, Dasan, and Aviram. He says, get yourself away from all of them. Vayakam Moshe. Now look what happens. Okay, we're still in the red zone. Moshe gets up in 25. So now Moshe again, he goes to Dasan and Aviram again. Now this time he goes because if they're not going to come, they're not going to come. But he's got to lower the boom. He tells everybody, stay away from them because if you're guilt by association, if you're near them, you're going to be in trouble. They kind of stand out defiantly. They get themselves up, and Dustin and Aviram, they went out, and it says Nitzavim. They're standing upright with indignation with their wives, the children, and the infants. And Moshe says, "Vayomer Moshe bezos teidunu kashem shalachani lasas eskolam basim alakilom libi." Now you know, and this is such an important pasuk. Now you will know that God is the one who sent me to do all of these things, and it's not from my own heart. What do you mean my own heart? Because you might think your problem was with me, he says to Dasan and Aviram. Your problem was with Moshe. And you'll think, oh, I'm being petty, I'm being personal, I'm being vengeful. He's saying this is how you, and that's why he gathers everyone around. You should all know that this is not my doing. Lomli libi, this is from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. This is from God, okay? The pasuk continues 29. Im kamos kol adam yimusun. We turn the page. Elev gadas kol adam yipaked alehem lo Hashem shulachani. If these die like the death of all men and the destiny of all men is visited upon them, that is not Hashem who has sent me. But in Bria Yivra Hashem ufatzasa adamas piyav Allah osam v'eskol shalahem v'yardu chaim sha'olav v'datem ki niyatzu anashim elas Hashem. However, if the ground should open up, and what happens? Hashem creates this miracle, and the ground opens up and swallows them. They will descend alive to the pit, and you will know that these men have provoked Hashem. As soon as he finishes speaking, the earth swallows it up, everything that's and the Tiftach ha'aretz has piha, and the ground opens up its mouth and it swallows them and their hounds and everybody. Asher leKorach was kol adam asher leKorach was kol rechush. Anyone that was with Korach, and here it doesn't mean Korach personally, because we're going to have a question in a second about what happens to Korach and all of their wealth. The earth swallows them up. Everything is gone. They're gone. Everybody was very worried, of course. They start screaming, oh, they're worried that the earth is going to swallow us. And then we have the last pasuk in the chapter, and it just kind of like nonchalantly throws in, and I put this in blue because this is not part of the Dasan Aviram. It says, oh, by the way, it never, it sets the stage for it that, oh, come here with your fire pans, but it doesn't finish it. It has this interjected couple of paragraphs here, and then at the end of the chapter it says, by the way, oh yeah, by the way, the fire killed them. So by the way, were they swallowed up in the earth? Seemingly no, but that's because the Aaron people, those who challenged Aaron, got the Aaron punishment that Moshe realized from Dasan and Aviram. I'm from Nadav and Avihu, that he said with the Ketores. And by the way, look at this. Yatsa me'es Hashem, Eish yatsa me'es Hashem. A fire came from God, by the way. A fire came from heaven and consumed Nadav and Avihu because they did something they weren't commanded to. Fine. The next chapter, by the way, so if you go to the next page, we have the beginning of chapter 17. And here Hashem speaks to Moshe and he says, speak to Elazar and pick up all the pans, and they're holy, etc., and beat them. But this is really referring to the pans. We never refer much again to the people who were swallowed up in the earth again. Now, the question is it 250? Both? Like, it's very confusing. This is that last pasuk 35 really throws a monkey wrench into this whole theory, but it's not going to, and again, I'll throw another Yiddishism that they used to say in Gemara, when you're learning a whole thing and you have a great mahalach, you have a great approach to something, and somebody has like a really good question. So sometimes the Rebbe would say, no, right? Which means like nobody ever died from a question. Like, okay, you have a question, okay, it doesn't ruin everything, okay? That's not how it works. It gets much better in Yiddish. So yes, you have a question?
Yeah. So it says a little earlier before they got swallowed up, it says, with their wives and children and infants. But then it says 250 men. What happened to the wives and children and infants?
Right. So it's very vague. It's deliberately vague. And by the way, how many 250s are there? Like we said, right? It's like, are these 250? Are they the same ones? Are they different ones? It's hard to know. Okay. So what helps us here is again, we're just trying to understand here, but kind of Moshe Rabbeinu's approach. But what you have to realize is what I want to illustrate this morning is how to read the text properly. Reading the text, you can't just flow through it. You have to realize that there's this section, and by the way, each time when it says Vayomer, it's a different saying. There's a different conversation that's taking place, and there's a reason why there's a different conversation taking place. Look at this last Gemara in Sanhedrin at the last page. The Gemara in Sanhedrin, okay, the final question, what happened to Korach? We know he died, but how? Okay, how did Korach die? So if I would ask you, how did Korach die? It's certainly not clear from the pasuk. Was he in the fire breathers or was he in those swallowers? Maybe they swallowed fire, like those people do at weddings. Okay, so the Gemara in Sanhedrin, the Gemara discusses all these the issues in Sanhedrin Kuf Yud. B'masnisna Tana, Korach min hasrufen umin habeluim. It says that Korach was from both those who were burned and both from those who were swallowed. Min hablum d'chsiv vativla osam ves Korach min hasrufim d'chsiv vateisesh misnei Hashem ve'esh yatzam meis Hashem v'tochas chamishim asam ish v'Korach v'hadayu. Right? One pasuk says that the earth opened its mouth and swallowed them with Korach, and the other pasuk says that the fire came forth and devoured the 250 that burned the incense, and Korach was with them. So what do you suppose that is suggesting? What do you think the Gemara? Now, the Gemara is not, we can't have, let's say, what we call a machlokas and metzius, which means like either he was burned or he was swallowed.
He was responsible for both.
Listen to this, genius. I'm brilliant, right? Yafit said first day back. She picked up right where she left off. Unbelievable, right? That's exactly the point. Is that Korach, what the Gemara is telling us here is that he was responsible for this whole mess. Whether you were swallowed, it doesn't matter how he died, but it was all on him. That's why, by the way, Parsha is known as Korach. And that's why, again, and the reason, and what's the best way to illustrate that Korach was sort of involved in both? Red, blue, red, blue, red. If you look at the alternating sequence, this is all part of the Korach story, and that's why his name is constantly interwoven into each of those stories. And ultimately speaking, different people, they fight, they want different things. They'll band together, but this one wants this one wants this one wants this. The people are, if you're reading Israeli media now, it's just like too good. It is just too good.
Common enemy, that's it.
That the politics of what's going on now. And by the way, until they're actually sworn into office, I'm not going to believe it, because you never know when anything can happen. It's going to be a long weekend. They're saying that they're going to be sworn in on Sunday. It's a long weekend. A lot can happen today. And by the way, and you see the machlokas, that's not l'shem shemayim. By the way, so we always say, machlokas l'shem shemayim is okay. But Chazal teach us that you have to make sure that your l'shem shemayim is l'shem shemayim. Because everybody thinks that they're arguing for the sake of heaven, but you have to make sure that your sake of heaven is really for the sake of heaven. What you think is for the sake of heaven may not necessarily be. So it was and to me, it's awful. Again, I'm not Israeli. I don't vote in the election. But when I read these things, it's just especially in the week of Parshas Korach, which is not lost on most people, by the way, in Israel, that this is the Parsha, that some of the religious community so decried the Yamina faction that they told Naftali Bennett today to take up his kippah. He said, "You don't deserve it." He said, "Take off." Now, by the way, people get very passionate about these things, but I'm just saying, and and this is on record because this is being recorded. I'm not counting Bibi out of anything until they're. By the way, even if they're sworn into office, who knows that they'll stay in a week. Because if you have a majority of one, all it takes is one person to get, and they all want their things, and that's what's happening. Of course, then on the other side, it's such a Kiddush Hashem because, Israel, by the way, which is an apartheid state, and now you have an Arab person in the government, and you have more women in the government than ever, and more people are liberal in the government. You have an openly homosexual person in the government. Like, oh, yeah, obviously they're an apartheid state and they're horrible, and we should have a special UN council to decry, a Security Council meeting to decry how awful they are, this new government especially, colonialists. But be that as it may, it's fascinating. And by the way, you have to look at it, and when you zoom out and you see what's going on there, like you say, man, God has such a sense of humor. This is great. Like to have all this happen, like Dafka, the week of Parshas Korach, is just awesome. But what happens is that people have their own wants, and I'm willing to team up with you, Moshe, and that's what you have to get out of this. Moshe and his brilliance, he falls down, but he acts, and he knows which group to speak to this, and then how to deal with this. You can't just because they lump themselves together, you have to divide and you have to conquer. And that's clearly borne out in the text. Now, again, did it work necessarily? No, because what happens right afterwards, which is also often lost on the reader, is as soon as you would think that after this happens, people are like, yes, Moshe emes v'saras emes. What's the first thing that people do? They cry, they complain, they go, why'd you kill the nation of God? Moshe, what are you doing? He's like, really? So then what does he do? He has another test, another miracle, the miracle of the staff, with the almonds and the nuts and this and that, right? And which ended up, by the way, the Gemara says was being stored in the Aron for all times, the staff of Aron. Because ultimately speaking, what miracles do people, and this is another lesson, what miracles do people respond to? Not miracles of violence, not miracles of destruction, miracles of things that grow. Beautiful miracles, things that sprout. And that's what gets to people. It's an interesting, look into that. But anyway, this is fascinating stuff that you could spend a lot of time on it. I didn't want to give you like the snapshot of it. Now, I don't want to follow on the screen and confuse everybody. But when you have the chance, again, look through it, read the parsha with the color coding, and it will make all the difference of how you approach it, and see if you would break it up that way or not.
I don't think you send that to us.
Yeah.
Did you send that?
Approached it in a different way. If you think about it, he was part of the same family. It is a little bit unusual that one family has all control and power. So if he would have approached it in a different way, saying, look, I understand you were appointed by God, Moshe, so I'm not challenging that. But Aaron, you picked Aaron, you're his brother.
Did he pick Aaron?
Well,
No. You have to come to the Shiur Shabbos morning to hear the answer to that question. But yes, it's not. That's a misnomer. He did not pick Aaron. God picked Aaron.
But it was conveyed to the people in a different way, where Moshe kind of bequeathed.
So in other words, would he really ask the question that way? Then yes.
Okay, so it
But he
wasn't
didn't.
necessarily the question. It was more.
Moshe was wise enough to understand what's going on here and to see what he's really. Like when people ask you a question, they kind of like you get what they're really asking.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what do you really, like that?
But
So,
to get the honor of having a parsha named after you, doesn't that seem?
if you think about all the name parshas that we have, most of them are not after someone who was like a hero, like Balak, right? Yeah. I'm sorry, Nancy, you had a question?
You didn't send us the color coded thing.
I just sent it right before the Shiur.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I sent it at about, we started 10:30, I sent it about 10:24. Because I finally got it together. Okay, great. Anyway, well done. Great to have everybody back. This is, I'm so happy, great stuff. So everybody have a great evening, great day. It's, stay warm, stay cool.
Thank you.
Whatever.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.